my name's David, and I am a second year medical student at the University of Nottingham, and I am a care leaver. So today I'll take you through a couple of things. So, firstly, what is a care leaver, and some definitions and what it is and what it isn't. Some statistics about care leavers in higher education. This is a health careers conference, but as you hopefully understand, care leavers and care experience students are very niche. And in terms of getting more care leavers to apply to higher education, you've got to kind of work on the general concept of getting care leavers into higher education before you start working on the niches of healthcare courses, etc. So I'll talk about, as I say, stats about care leavers in higher education, and also challenges faced by care leavers in their application, my own journey to higher education and my care experience background, and a little bit of advice and some of the support available for care leavers. So, as I say, care leavers, what is it? To get the ball rolling, I'm going to explore some definitions, basically, because I'm sure there'll be some people watching who may not actually know what a care leaver is. I mean, hopefully some of you will be health and social care professionals, etc., who do, but if there's anyone who doesn't, I always think it's really important to start here when talking about care leavers, because I've delivered talks before about care experience students and care leavers to people in the higher education sector, and actually people very senior in the higher education sector. And the response I've got when talking about care leavers is often, what are you talking about? What is a care leaver? Well, either that, or there's some sort of some thought of like a Tracy Beaker related experience. Who knows? So that is actually understandable, because until recently there hasn't really been that much general exposure for care leavers. In the last kind of like 12 months or so, there's been a couple of things in the media. I think there was a BBC Three documentary about care leavers, and the topic of care and care leavers, and there are a myriad of terms related to care. And unless you work in health and social care, I wouldn't really expect you to know much about them. So what is a care leaver? So I've had to do a bit of research here myself to get some concrete facts and figures. But for those of you who are interested, I've used a fantastic report which was published in November 2017, called Heracles, which is Moving On Up, Pathways of Care Leavers and Care Experienced Students into and Through Higher Education. And that was published by NECL and UWE, so NECL being the National Network for the Education of Care Leavers, and UWE, the University of West of England, in conjunction with a lot of other supporting partners. And I've used this document exclusively for the information that I'll provide you with. If you are a social care professional or a teacher or anyone involved with care leavers or care experienced students, and you haven't come across this report already, please read it. It really is fantastic. And obviously, this is a healthcare careers event, and in healthcare careers, we hope we rely on an evidence base to make our decisions from research, and that isn't necessarily the case when it comes to social care. And if we can get everyone operating from an evidence base, not only an evidence base, the same evidence base, then we can. I'm certain we can improve outcomes for care leavers in higher education. Back to definitions, I've digressed slightly. But a care leaver is a young person aged 16 or over who has spent 3 months or more in care since the age of 14. So I was in care from 16 to 18 until my 18th birthday. So I am categorised as a care leaver. And more about care. In the UK, there is a statutory safety net provided by local authorities for children whose parents are unable or unwilling to care for them, or are suffering harm or abuse, and that's being in care, that statutory safety net. That safety net may also be used if children are unaccompanied asylum seekers, refugees, if they're homeless, or if they're orphaned. And you'll also have heard me mention care experienced young people. And it is important to make the distinction between a care experienced young person and a care leaver, because they aren't actually interchangeable terms. A care experienced young person is someone with any experience of care, no matter how long, and they're supported in a slightly different way. There isn't any, I don't think there's any statutory support available for care experienced students. However, there are places that do offer support for care experience. It's just not statutory, as I say. So I'll give you some statistics about care leavers in higher education. And these, as I say, is all taken from the Moving On Up Heracles document, the report. So there are around 650 care leavers that enter higher education each year of all ages, leading to a total in any given academic year of around 2,500 various all undergraduate years. Care leavers were around 11% less likely to enter higher education than other young people with similar demographic profiles and qualification levels. So that's after, as I say, after you take that into account. Care leavers are about 38% more likely to withdraw from their course and not return than their non-care experienced counterparts. And that's actually an interesting one for me because I do a lot and I'm very interested in widening participation. And it's important to make the distinction between widening participation and widening access. Widening access is about getting those people to apply in the first place and getting them through the door onto higher education courses. And widening participation is about access and then retention. So this figure about being more likely to withdraw is particularly important when it comes to looking at widening participation. It's not all negative though. Care leavers who did complete a degree were just as likely as other students to achieve a first or upper second class degree once entry qualifications and their demographic profile was taken into account. So I do really want this to be, I don't want to be all doom and gloom because here I am as a care leaver studying medicine, hopefully doing well. It isn't all doom and gloom, and I really want this to be an opportunity for hopefully care leavers. If there are any care leavers watching this, that would be absolutely fantastic. It isn't all negative, but looking at those stats, it does give an indication that there maybe are a few challenges faced uniquely by care leavers, and the Heracles report really summarises these very well. So some of the challenges reported were poor support from the local authority, and I'll come on to that in a moment. Difficulties in navigating changes associated with the transition to higher education, financial problems, and social emotional issues. And the most common reasons for considering leaving higher education, so going back to that retention, were academic issues, emotional and mental health issues, and financial problems. So that first challenge that I talked about, poor support from the local authority. Now, this is a difficult one because, believe it or not, although all local authorities have a statutory support package that is required of them to provide for care leavers, some of them, that's quite basic, and some of them provide a lot of support above and beyond that, and some of them provide a lot less than others. But as I say, they have to get that baseline of statutory support. So it is difficult for care leavers because they're already on an uneven playing field, and then based on where they live and what local authority they're under, there's even more disparity because some will really push them and help them, and some of them less so. Something that has changed the statutory requirement of local authorities has changed fairly recently. They're now required by law to publish their offer for care leavers. They're required to say what they offer, because I think one of the biggest things that people struggled with is they just didn't know what the offer was, what support was available. So yeah, there's a big difference, and it's already hard as it is. Moving forwards from that, so being in care is a very unique experience inherently, and I think that's probably one of the hardest things about it. Today's world seems to be more and more about fitting into prescribed and predetermined boxes, And that comes to the fore when you're applying to higher education and you have to fill out forms and you have to fill out applications, and it's tick box here and tick box there. And that's quite difficult because you don't always fit into those boxes. So whilst it's important to recognise care leavers as a single body, it's even more important to understand that those young people have completely different experiences and completely different needs and don't always fit into those boxes. And that's why it's essential to have a support network, and it's essential for the local authority to provide that support, but also the higher education institutions to provide that support, because it helps when those young people encounter boxes that they don't fit into. And again, that's also why it's important that we're all kind of coming from the same place in terms of we're using evidence, an evidence basis, to justify our actions and support plans, etc. That support network is absolutely essential for care leavers in higher education. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So what about my journey to higher education? How did I get here talking to you now, all 8 of you? So as I mentioned, being in care is a highly unique experience, and my experience might not be what you have in mind, but then really with care leavers, to be honest with you, I'd say wipe the slate clean, because they are so different. All experiences. I've met other young people who've been in care, and there is a huge array of and range of experiences. So I went into care age 16. Doing so in the way I did meant that I was able to continue at the same school for sixth form as I'd been at before. And that's fairly unique for young people in care, because they often have a very disrupted educational experience for a variety of reasons, and that's also outlined in that report. And I was lucky in that I had that continuity. So as I say, I was supported really well by my school and my social care team, and I'm pretty sure had I not been in the place I was with my school, etc., that I would not have made it to where I am now. Why medicine? Well, from my GCSE results, I did pretty well, and I'd never really considered medicine before that. Suddenly, I was getting the grades to be able to do it, and it was something I'd always been interested in. A combination of that and some personal experiences, it suddenly was a door that was opening for me. So then I got into my A-level studies and into my foster care placement, and I realised that things were going to be a little bit harder than I'd originally thought. So not only are A-levels hard at the best of times, I took on a part-time job at weekends. I now live 20 miles away from where I did before in my foster placement. For a lot of reasons, life was quite hard. And not only that, I did a really bad job of juggling it all and managing myself. So long story short is I didn't do very well academically during sixth form. I got pretty low A-level grades, certainly for wanting to study medicine. I was getting B's and C's. So low A-level grades and I'm wanting to study medicine doesn't really sound too great, does it? And that's pretty much what I was told by my school, which I don't blame them for. It's not that they didn't have faith that I could study medicine. They just didn't believe that there was any way I could study medicine with the grades that I was projected to get. And as I say, that's fair enough, because at the time there weren't really many entry points where you could study medicine with those grades. And they were very good at, because they were, the school I went to was a very academic school. Their experience and their expertise was in getting highly achieving students into highly achieving academic institutions. And suddenly, here's a relatively averagely performing student wanting to get into to study medicine, which is a fairly highly academic course, and they didn't really know what to do. So I did my research and I realised that there was a chance. Because of my circumstances, there was a contextual route via a foundation year that would allow me to study medicine over 6 years at the University of Nottingham. My hopes weren't high, but it was a chance, and it was the best chance I had. So I applied. Naturally, I was initially rejected because I didn't meet the criteria for this foundation year. I did my research, and I knew that as a care leaver, I should, in theory, meet the criteria to be on a widening participation foundation year, which is what the foundation year course at Nottingham is. It's a WP entry route into medicine. So with the help of my social care team, I challenged that initial rejection and was successful and was subsequently offered an interview. It does make me realise that if I had given up at that point and just thought, well, I've been rejected, medicine's just not for me, my life would be very, very different right now. And being stubborn has got me somewhere maybe 3 times in my whole life, and that was one of them, not taking no for an answer. So I attended the interview, and to be quite honest with you, it was one of the most stressful days of my life. But a little while later, I had news that I had an offer, and that providing I met the A-level requirements of 2 Bs in chemistry and biology and a C in my remaining A-level, then I would be studying medicine in September. And I met those entry requirements, and I never really looked back. I've absolutely loved my experience at university so far. It has been challenging at times, but it's been very, very rewarding. Probably more rewarding than I ever could have hoped. So anyway, now I'll move on and talk a little bit about the support available for care leavers and a bit of advice I've come up with if there are any care leavers watching who are going to university in September or are considering higher education. In terms of the support available for care leavers, as I said before, this varies local authority to local authority, and it also varies university to university. Every local authority even has a statutory support package, and every university will have a designated person in charge of care leavers. That support varies hugely. I'm lucky in that my local authority supports me financially by contributing to my accommodation on top of the statutory support. I also receive really generous bursaries from my university. I then also have a fantastic PA, and that's someone who basically takes over the role of the social worker a little bit when you leave care. They're there to just help you in life, in your professional development and educational development through life. And there's also a brilliant support network that I have here at the university in the widening participation team. Without these people doing the fantastic jobs that they do, I would have really have struggled with my university experience, and it would have been far less enjoyable. In terms of some websites I'd recommend looking at, so there's the NECL website, the National Network for the Education of Care Leavers, and Propel, which is a website from the charity Become. And Propel in particular is very good. And this lists the named contact from all higher education institutions whose role it is to support care leavers. So if you're thinking about applying to any particular university, you can stick that university into Propel and it will tell you a named contact and a phone number and an email for that person. And you can, before you've even applied, you can speak to them and find out what support is available. And I think that's really important. I'd say a big worry for a lot of care leavers is financial support. How are they going to be able to afford university? But I'd say with some careful planning, it's definitely manageable. If you do your research and you find out about the support available and do some budgeting, you're well on your way. I've continued to work part-time at university to help make things easier. And if you can manage your time effectively, then I'd say it's definitely something important to take into account. That said, although financial support is sometimes worried about a lot, the emotional well-being and academic support, pastoral side of things, probably isn't thought about enough. Without the network of support that I've lent on over the past 2 years, I probably wouldn't still be at uni. I probably would have dropped out because it would have been too difficult. So in terms of like specific advice for any care leavers with offers to study at university in September, I've put together a few things that I think may be helpful to think about during the transition process to uni. One of the things identified as, recipes for success in that Heracles document was a managed transition process. And to be honest with you, the onus is on you to manage that with the help of your PA, your social worker, the higher education institution. If you all work together You can make it successful, but the onus is really on you to get the ball rolling. So the idea of going to university can obviously be very daunting, and to be nervous is completely normal. That in mind, the first thing I'd say is be kind to yourself. Remember that everyone is in the same boat when you go to uni. Even if you are a care leaver, no one knows each other. This is a whole fresh start. It's very full on. It's exciting. And to get the most out of it, you'll probably be very busy meeting new people, trying new things, adjusting to a new way of life that is completely different. Don't forget to have some time to yourself if you need it. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. But personally, I think it's really important in those first few weeks that you get involved with as many things as possible, as soon as possible. In my experience, you do get out what you put in. Start building that network of new people, of friends, as soon as you can. Whether that means sports, other societies, there'll be a lot of things to get involved with at uni. There always is. And since you're studying a healthcare science, a lot of healthcare subjects often have their own societies as well. So there's societies within societies, and they'll probably hold their own welcome events as well. So keep an eye out for those and get involved. It's a fresh start. It's a chance to try all sorts of new things that you may never have considered before, and it's a unique opportunity. You probably won't get an opportunity like it again. You can begin to get acquainted with your course and the academic side of things, but make sure you're settled in and comfortable first before you start to worry about some of the finer details. It is very easy to worry, and life's too short to worry, in my experience. As I mentioned, everyone is in the same position as you, so your course will be a good place to start making some friends. Often the academic requirements of the course is pretty unknown in terms of like the actual breakdown and day-to-day. So it can be quite easy to worry about that unknown. My advice is just to try and relax and not worry. Your course tutors and your lecturers won't leave you in the dark, and you will be given the tools that you need. It's also not uncommon to worry about whether you deserve to be there or you feel like there's been a mistake and you're in the wrong place. And this is often known as imposter syndrome. And I think there might have been a talk on that today, if you've seen it. You feel like you're an imposter amongst people who deserve to be there. And it's more common than you'd imagine. Just reassure yourself and remember that you deserve to be there because the university's chosen you and they rarely make mistakes. Something else I found key in my transition to higher education was maintaining my existing relationship with my PA to access support if I needed, whilst also developing that new support network once I'd moved to the university with the widening participation team. Sometimes young people feel like there's a stigma associated with being in care. And I'm very fortunate in that I've not really experienced that. I would encourage you to be proud to be a care leaver and be proud of your achievements that have meant that you're looking at going to university or you are going to university and also joining the healthcare profession. I think that's everything from me today. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask.